KM Industry Study Circle, along with the Institute of Internal Auditors. Really grateful for sparing your time. The topic for today's event is tracing the 30 years of evolution of financial scams, how regulators have reacted it, and how the governance practices have evolved. And the session will be moderated by Arun Giri. Let me introduce, Sucheta Dalal needs no introduction. She is known as one of the well-known financial journalists in India. In 2006, she was awarded the Padma Shri, the highest Indian civilian award, based on her outstanding investigative journalism. She was the financial editor with the Times of India, also has written for Business Standard, Economic Times, Indian Express. In her 35 years of investigative reporting, she's closely looked at the Harshad Mehta scam, Bhansali scam, Enron, and few more as well. And we'll hear what has changed since then in today's session. Madam has also served as a member of the SEBI's Primary Market Advisory Committee, Narayan Murthy Corporate Governance Committee, as also a member of the Investor Education and Protection Fund of the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. She's co-authored the best-selling book, The Scam, From Harshad Mehta to Ketan Parekh, and biography of A.D. Shroff as well. We all, I'm sure, must have looked at the web series based on this famous book. Her recent book, co-authored with Debashish Basu, Absolute Power on NSE, is also now available. Madam, we are really grateful to have you at our forum. The fireside chat will be moderated by my dear friend Arun Giri. Arun Giri is a qualified chartered accountant and a well-known financial journalist in India. He, over the last 18 years, has reported, he's considered as a breaking news reporter, as we call him fondly, and has covered significant developments in the financial journalism. He's also the co-founder and the group editor of Taxutra, a leading content portal in India. Arun is a dear friend, very active on the professional causes, and he'll be the host for today's session. Arun, over to you, and we are eager to all the conversation today. Thank you.
I think Arun is muted.
Yeah, actually, I muted myself. Now I again need the admin's permission to unmute. That's why. Such are the vagaries of all the digital media. Feels a bit odd today because I've always interacted with Sucheta face to face, and I have an amazing recall of almost every conversation. On our request, she's been to Pune so many times. At all our big conferences, at some of our meets, and whichever events Sucheta and Money Life have hosted in Pune, whenever I've been in Pune, I've attended all of them. So maybe we did not speak much about Money Life, but I must tell that it's one of the pioneering forums which has taken up so many issues dear to the investors, to the citizenry at large. I think it may have started with investors, but citizenry at large, and so many well-meaning people have been associated or are associated with Money Life for over a decade or so, at least since when I have been following Money Life. So Sucheta, on behalf of all of us, do accept our congratulations for running such a a dedicated forum. It's tough to do that over so many years. Last night I was at a dinner, and I just told a couple of journalists, including a very senior journalist who worked with Sucheta, that and I'm going to be interviewing her. And the eyes popped up like, "You're going to be interviewing Sucheta?" And they were like, "Oh, do ask her this question." There are people who still remember the firebrand Sucheta Dalal of '92 who exposed the Harshad Mehta scam. Sucheta, I have to start with that. From '92 to 2022 years, and we still have scams unabated. Has anything changed at all in these 30 years, Sucheta?
First of all, thanks Arun for having me here. It's lovely to be part of this session moderated by you. And thanks Amaya for inviting me. Amaya, I must put in a word here to say that thanks to Arun introducing you to us, you have done such wonderful work for the tax helpline that we used to run. So I have to thank you for, sparing all the time that you did. So I'm really happy to be here and participate. So let's come to, if scams stop, just think about it. The human mind is always more ingenious and smarter than regulatory agencies and investigation agencies, right? So I don't think scams stop anywhere in the world. You've seen it happening. I mean, even look at America or everything. You're going from one scam to another. You have Madoff, you have the accounting scandals, then you have something else. Then you had this big global thing which, almost destroyed the finances of the whole world. 2 countries went bankrupt. So I don't think we're ever going to have a time when there is no scam. What I find a little hard to digest is that 92 was a big learning experience in many ways. Okay, so the country was at the cusp of big change. From a closed economy, we had started liberalization, and in the middle of this the scam happened. We had no foreign exchange reserves, and when this happened, the government was well meaning to start with. So they had a special courts act, they had a legislation to handle this and to try the cases fast. Instead, the special court still exists. Those judges get, some extra perks to be there. They are still dragging on. I mean, people find it hard to believe, but the Harshad Mehta scam was never about Harshad Mehta alone. He was just one of the players. There was Harshad, Citibank, Standard Chartered, Bhupendra Lal, Hitendra Lal. I mean, there were so many of them. And the cases are still going on, right? That should be, and what surprises me is that no government looks at this as a national shame. How can this go on forever? The difference between us and any other civilized country is that they learn. So they say, yes, there will be scams because scamsters are always really smart. And, every time I've spoken in public, I've said the one thing about every scamster is that they usually have enormous guts, to do things that others would hesitate to do, and are often pretty smart. They're definitely 2 jumps ahead of regulatory agencies because they think they've thought it through and they think they can get away with something. They can get around the rules, right? So they've done more thinking than the regulator has. So you're going to have a scam, but once the scam is out, are you going to do something to check it, to handle it fast or not? So coming back to 92, we didn't even segregate what is important and what is not. What is civil and what is criminal? What are the few things we should look at now? One of the things you would notice all over, enough of TV serials that we watch even in America, you get some people to become the approvers, as we call them in India, and you get the main guy. You go after them, you make an example out of them. Not in India. In India, you will, just cast the field so wide, look at everybody, their peon, their driver, drag them into it, so that you have endless paperwork. You have 25 people arrested when you should have arrested 3 people. And you never finally, over a period of time, you start diluting. So what I have been saying a long time is, over the decades, is in India, a scam, when it becomes uncomfortable for the government politically, then you will let loose the CBI, whose first action is to go and do arrests so that you have photo opportunities. Once there is the photo opportunity, they take their own sweet time to register a case in court. Once that case is registered, it's a black hole. Then it's dragging on for the next 25 years. People come and go. Many people I have a number of senior police, IPS friends. Everybody's biodata says, handle the scam. And I keep wondering, what did you handle? If you handled it and you're proud enough to put it in your biodata, it should have led to some results, right? So I think the day we as citizens say that if you cannot finish your investigation and legal action in under 5 years and punish people, it's a national shame. So don't tell us you've acted, because that has no meaning.
Sucheta, I was almost going to, but I resisted. Harshad Mehta is dead.
Correct.
Harshad Mehta is dead. And was just looking, it was going to be one of my later questions, but you mentioned it, so we'll bring it up here. Now look at the Satyam scam. in 2009-10, and it's one of those few ones which I covered. And there was an uproar. It was a ostensibly 7,000 crore scam where the promoter himself admitted, "मैंने scam किया है. I have done it." And he said, I mounted a tiger which I could not ride, and so on and so forth. He arrested 3 years in jail, then got bail, got convicted by the trial court or whatever. And after that, he got bail. And after that, I'm trying to just see whether there's been any sort of movement, and there hasn't been. It just vindicates what you've been saying. A 7,000 scam where it's almost an open and shut case. There has been a trial court conviction, and yet the promoter, Mr. Raju, is today possibly out on bail unless he's again been put behind bars. But it's too long a process, and that just does not seem to be a finality. Now you look at cases in Supreme Court, Sucheta, and every time there is a petition, someone is filing a curative petition, it just seems there is no finality whatsoever.
Absolutely. And in Satyam, I think after a number of years, SEBI passed an order, and as usual, they filed an appeal. So this means that today India's legal system is only for pockets. Now, if you look at the NSE matter, co-location scam, the 1,000 crore penalty with interest would come to about 1,400 crore. Given that NSE, and I'm sure your accountants here, it has an operating profit of 72%. I mean, it's mind-boggling, right? Look at the size of this exchange. Look at their profits. And this 1,400 crore is, forget about a slap on the wrist, it's not even a little touch and a poke, okay? Now, anybody else would have said, wonderful, what a lovely weak order. Let me just pay it and move on, make my IPO. No individual. SEBI has nuked its own order by saying we couldn't find any involvement of management. So what's coming out here, which shows that they have not done enough of an investigation. But 3 years ago, when the order came out, if I were heading the NSE, and remember, there's a new head of the NSE who's come to clean it up, I would have said, "Acha hai boss, pay the 1,400 crore and move on, khatam karo." Instead of which, they said they got legal advice to go and file an appeal. So everyone is in court appealing. I mean, look at what is happening today. More and more dirt has come. If they were not stupid enough to keep all that open, I'm just hoping that this time things will be different. And for once, the fact that you have gone into appeal and you didn't close it when you had an opportunity should come to bite them in the backside.
Yeah, well said, Sucheta. But we'll come to NSE later because that deserves 10 minutes. We started with scams. Harshad Mehta, you wrote a lot about ILFS. That really triggered off action. That triggered off quick action. That triggered off a FIR. That triggered off a charge sheet. And then, things started to fizzle out at the High Court level. Again, some of the main players, one of them, I think, is possibly no more, and so on. So, so you again, the same pattern unfolds, except the magnitude. ILFS, the magnitude shocked everyone. It seemed a governance failure as well. Harshad Mehta could have been, in many ways, you could have called it a regulatory failure as well, Sucheta. ILFS seems to be, where the government has so much control, but things have languished in such a way for a while. One man, you wrote about it so much, one man so dominantly running the company, like a personal fiefdom almost. Auditors came under the glare, renowned auditors. And then finally, the way things exploded all of a sudden, Sucheta, no one saw that coming.
No. So I have a slightly different perspective. While I agree with most of what you say, so I don't think the charge sheet was filed, okay? So what happened is, remember the timing, it was 2018. And yes, it exploded. Many of us knew that they had an outstanding debt of 1 lakh crore and they were fudging. But you see the similarity between NSE and ILFS. ILFS, the parent company, was private, okay? It was not listed. So no sunshine, no RTI, no regulation. Exactly like the National Stock Exchange. They want it to be like that. So there is a huge problem when you call something a professionally run company, because all that they do is regulatory capture. They grow bigger and bigger and bigger. and they capture everybody who ought to take action. ILFS, unlike any other scam, I call it an IAS scam. The entire bureaucracy in every state was co-opted by ILFS because it was this giant organization, 340 companies or whatever. I mean, imagine the first day embarrassment. The government of India did not even know how many companies ILFS had. The first press release which said they've superseded the board, I think said there were some 160 or 167 companies when there were 340 companies, 340 plus. I mean, what does this tell you about the government of India, the RBI, the SEBI, a government press release is not issued superseding the board from the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. I mean, it's such a joke, right? MCA 21 is something all of us are struggling with. And you didn't have a record of how many companies and step down subsidiaries there are in this Hydra like giant octopus that you had allowed to be created. And it's not that we were not writing. I have been writing about ILFS saying nobody is regulating it. Okay. And nobody is regulating NSE as well, because you look at what NSE also did. They created NSDL, which does the tax information network. Since you're all auditors here, I have to point out, how do you think this whole tax information network was set up in the first place? So if you have NSDL, a depository which is under SEBI and under the SEBI Act, then two questions, okay? One is the man who writes the NSDL Act while sitting in SEBI goes on to head NSDL. Why should there be a separate act and not a subordinate legislation to SEBI? Nobody has asked. It was quietly pushed through. Then NSDL decides that I don't have to report to SEBI. If Finance Ministry tells me set up a tax information network, I will set it up. Since they're all closed bodies, nobody said paisa kahan se aayega. So NSDL, like NSE, extremely profitable, money gouged from investors by having high fees, high demat charges, and that money is used to set up the tax information network. I mean, how bizarre is this, right? So I have asked people at the appropriate time, written an article in Indian Express, so it's not that I'm saying it today, it's there in the public domain, that who is in charge of supervising NSDL? Is it Finance Ministry? Is it SEBI? It is now under UK SINA after this whole co-location scandal that NSDL, some parts of it are properly brought under SEBI legislation. Otherwise, it was a grey area. And all this was happening during Mr. Damodaran's time. And Mr. Damodaran, as SEBI chairman, asked some questions. They didn't like it. So, his term sort of got over. He was about to be given an extension, again, all documented in UK SINA's book, in our book. And then overnight, suddenly his name goes off the list in a matter of 2 hours, and ring-fenced SEBI chairman, who is under investigation by SEBI, as NSDL chief, is made SEBI chairman. This is so bizarre. So, when you talk about what bizarre stuff we are ready to live with, it's like we Indians, we laugh today about this whole Chitra and Himalayan Guru, but aren't we equally gullible? We find a ring-fenced SEBI chairman, okay. Did anyone protest? Did anyone file a PIL? Only some donkeys like me kept writing saying what is this about? But we as a country were okay with it. How can a regulator be ring-fenced? Especially when the same regulator says that, SEBI is a chairman-led organization. It continues. Everything is dictated by one man. You may have a structure, you may have 5 offices across the country, you may build 10 SEBI bhavans, but the buck stops with one man with zero accountability. Because who's asking questions? And one of the things that we tweeted today was the difference you asked me in the first question between 92 and today is this, which is in 92, believe me, all this came out as rapidly because you had parliamentarians of the standing of George Fernandez, Somnath Chatterjee, Gurudas Dasgupta, who picked up the phone, who asked, "Ye ho kya raha hai?" and raised questions in parliament. Today, on every issue, what I find scandalous is there is no parliamentarian across the political spectrum, okay, who is going to ask the right questions, who understands. It's almost as though they only understand issues of caste and religion and some kind of disruption that they can create. Issues that matter financially to the country is not something you can get anyone to understand or to raise. The height is when somebody, actually is good enough to say, Acha, why don't you send me a question? So you draft a few points and say, ask it. They get the most bizarre replies, which never happened in 92, okay? Because answers to questions asked in Parliament were treated with utmost seriousness. You couldn't bluff, you couldn't lie, you couldn't deflect, you couldn't gaslight. Today you see all of it in the answers. Whether it is, an answer being given orally on the floor of the house, or an answer to questions. Question kya hai and answer kya hai. And again, everybody reads it. Media doesn't write because media is captured. Everything depends on government advertising. So who are they captured by? In our time, it used to be a little bit of influence by corporate India. Today, it is the states because they are the biggest advertisers. It's the government. So
Sucheta,
nobody asks any questions.
in ILFS, Sucheta, since you mentioned about ILFS, it's one of the largest scams in the last decade. What made you smell something wrong
Oh, I
in
had
ILFS?
sources, yeah. Quite simply,
Then apart from sources, anything in the way it was being run, Sucheta, that made you feel, oh no, something is clearly off.
Some of the stories that I finally wrote when it was coming out, we knew everything. The completely debauched manner in which that organization was being run was beyond anything. The kind of money they were spending. You ask anybody even remotely associated with ILFS. So I'll tell you, one of my former editors in Times of India had a bungalow in Bandra, and one of the senior ILFS guys hired one floor of it. And when he's talking to me, he says, Sucheta, what is this organization about? The kind of money that they're spending just to renovate the place which is on rent, I can't believe it. And I told him, you should be smart and tell them only for 3 years, then take the lower part of the house, I'm moving up, and get it renovated again so that you have your whole house redone. I mean, money was being spent like water on all kinds of things, private shopping expeditions, wives being taken, Birkin bags being bought. They had this Spanish company. So everybody had credit cards from Elsamex, which was in Spain. They had this box seats to watch football. People were, bank chairmen were being ferried first class to go and watch football. These are stories I knew. But, how do you, once you know that it has collapsed, all this has led to a collapse, only then can you write about it, because otherwise they would do to me what they did to me in NSC after the co-location scam. They shut you up by filing defamation. And if you notice, who's willing to give you documents? People like to say they're whistleblowers. But whistleblowers in India, their idea, except co-location, we had documents. But people's idea of being a whistleblower is to think that you're some kind of Himalayan guru. You can get into safes, you can get into accounts and know everything. So they'll tell you one line, this is happening, go and check it out. And I'm like, how will I check it out as an individual, right? If you're sitting inside, you have access to documents, you feel strongly in national interest, give something. I will protect your identity. I will go out of my way as a journalist, even if it means putting a red herring, which I've done for 35 years. That assurance I will give you. But you have to give me something that will stand up in court, because it's my neck on the line. You may think you're doing a big thing by giving me a tip off. As a journalist, and I know as a journalist, that we do not get to report more than 15 to 20% of what we really know, because we don't have the evidence to back it up. We at least have to have circumstantial evidence to back it up, right?
Yeah, sure, Sucheta.
No,
yeah.
I'm done.
No, I'm just jumping from topic to topic, considering the time. But let's also talk about the regulators, Sucheta. And I want to read something from, I think, the scam book. Yeah, and the one I had got right. There's a part where you said RBI guidelines are just that, guidelines, not the law of the land. And I'm reading out this para. In the old business district of Bombay, now Mumbai, they stand face to face. The 28-story building which houses the Bombay Stock Exchange, and it is the heart of India's capitalist system. And a kilometer away from it, the Reserve Bank of India, the country's central bank and supreme monetary authority. This proximity is deceptive. BSE is a market humming with brokers and jobbers who are driven by a welter of information trying to make a fast buck. RBI is an ivory tower full of self-important officials who are information averse and market blind. The gulf between RBI and BSE is 1,000 times wider than the physical distance. Sucheta, that's a glaring indictment of Reserve Bank. But is that how the regulators function? Sucheta, over the last 3 decades, would you give a little, do you think the regulators have become, especially in the digital information era, they've become a little more, proactive, they're trying to play catch up, but they're at least trying with rules and regulations, with the orders and so on and so forth? Or do you think they are still in the, in the 1992 era?
I think they're not only in the 1992 era, but we have gone and done the blunder of creating 5 of them. Okay, so where we had only RBI in an ivory tower, today you have SEBI in an ivory tower. You have IRDA sitting in Hyderabad where nobody knows. There's not even an IRDA chairman when LIC is going public. LIC is like a giant as compared to this puny IRDA where nobody is looking at. I mean, we've got a whistleblower on insurance, and we are the only ones who keep writing even about the state of their offices, the state of their ombudsman. There are no appointments. Okay, then you have the PF regulator, which nobody even knows exists, right? You have a high power committee where these guys are supposed to talk to each other. They're on each other's boards. Now they do not talk to the public. They all take pride in saying that if you write against us, if you dare to question us with uncomfortable questions, we deny access, right? So I have lost access to all of them directly a long time ago. In RBI, one person still talks, but their idea is we will shut you. They don't realize that that's not how it works. Because once you deny me access, I have no obligation to be on the right side. But most journalists don't understand this. They're so scared of losing access that they will not dare to criticize the regulator until, and I call this vulture journalism, okay? So I'm sure you're seeing it in the last 3 days. People who are so close and never asked questions to those who are in power, they wait until the person is dead. This happened to Vijay Mallya. When the person is finished, they wait till they're sure he's not going to revive, and then everybody is jumping on that dead body, pulling out stories and writing. I call it vulture journalism. You have the guts right when that person is powerful, not after he's dead. But that's the only journalism we do. Suddenly it's pouring out all over the place. Co-location scam is in all the papers. 5 years, you think the journalists were sleeping? They had no idea. Nobody wanted to write it, isn't it? And how is it that suddenly today everybody is an expert on NSE, digging up all kinds of details that they didn't know? So I'm saying regulators are, yes, in an ivory tower. The second thing that I'm saying, which is really very dangerous, okay, which is this new thing that's happened between 92 and, so I'm coming back to your first question multiple times because it's being raised in different contexts, which is what is the difference today? So, people used to tell me RBI officers are very honest, relatively, okay, as compared to investigation agencies, income tax, and whatever. So, today I keep saying that all of them have seen this huge inequality. There was a time where in 92, even on a journalist salary, we could occasionally go to the Taj and have coffee and not feel the pinch. Today, the inequality is so much that if you want to lead a certain lifestyle, you want a house in Bombay in one of the towers where there is a permanent EMI of 45 to 75,000 per month, then you need to be making 25, 30, 50 crore rupees, okay? And the government only needs to see how many people on a government salary who have retired are staying in these towers and can afford it. And they'll give you crap like this flat belongs to my brother-in-law and he's letting me stay, and someone else. And it's brazen, it is in broad daylight, it is in front of us, okay? How many police chiefs are staying in some of these towers? Do the numbers, right? What rate did they buy it at? And what is it that they're paying out every month? And, how can they afford it? But, so what I'm trying to say is that those days when they were not corrupt, they were happy to retire and go off to their hometowns, Hyderabad or Chennai or wherever, or maybe to the hills and retire is all over. They want to be here. They want to be on boards of companies. They want to earn crores of rupees as independent directors. They want to stay in a tower. And that greed has created more corruption and more silence in the system because no, everyone's co-opted. Nobody wants to talk.
Is it regulatory corruption or regulatory inaction, Sucheta?
Both. It's a combination, right? Why do you not act? Because even if you retire from a regulatory post, you're looking at board directorships. You are smoothly moving from, there has to be at least a 3-year gap between your stint. Frankly, 3 years is not enough. But your stint as a bank chairman or your stint as a regulator and then going on to the choicest boards, okay? The ones which pay the highest money, that is where they're going. You think this is not greed? Doesn't the inaction stem from greed?
Yeah, it reminds me of the immediate context for me is Supreme Court judges retiring and then taking up positions ranging from a Rajya Sabha seat to NHRC chairman to tribunal appointment. So, now you have so many tribunals.
Don't forget that they anyway earn money hand over fist in their legal opinions. So they don't even need to do that. They
and arbitration.
earn a lot more on arbitrations and legal opinions than they earned in their lifetime. But that's still not good enough for them.
You spoke about courts, you spoke about journalists, Sucheta. Let me come about journalists because we rarely speak about our own profession, Sucheta. But you wrote fearlessly. You've been writing for a long time, over the last decade or more, for your own publications as well. But back then, the Indian Express, was at the forefront always. It used to be called the journalism of courage, still is. In terms of journalistic ethics, journalistic integrity, editorial freedom, do you think we've gone back several decades? Actually, forget gone back. Do you think, Sucheta, that we are way below on that score vis-a-vis what we were when you were still at the Express?
See, it's very simple. I lost my job in Times of India, right? I mean, it was very clear that I had to go. Harshad's column was about to be carried in the paper. Luckily, H.K. Dua persuaded Ashok Jain that, it's ridiculous, please don't do it. He met me and told me that, look, I have ensured that they don't carry it now, but your days are numbered. You better look for another job. So that happened. I was writing for the Express. We fell out on the whole issue of stockholding corporation. If you look at our book and what we have written on stockholding, it is such a scandal. But I lost my column because of that, right? So I was never employed by Express. I was doing 2 edits and 3 columns a week for them, which is much more hard work than most journalists do, but from the outside, okay? Today, the situation is such that any journalist who wants to do hardcore journalism is out of mainstream in no time. So I keep saying that they have 3-4 years to make their mark. The minute they are writing hard-hitting stuff and they want to be non-compromising, they're out. So who is it? Look around you. Who is doing serious investigative journalism today? It is not mainstream media at all. But luckily, thanks to technology, thanks to the digital space, all of us have been able to carve out a niche. So we've set up Money Life. I remember in one public function, somebody had asked me, what would you have done if, I said that when I had to suddenly leave Express overnight, Devashish had luckily started Money Life and I was writing there. So he said, what if you didn't have it? I said, I don't know. I mean, I seriously used to joke, and it was a half-serious joke, that I will probably have to bake cakes. I was quite good at baking cakes to earn a living, okay? But it would have been that. Today, thanks to technology, there are organizations which to make their mark, remember? And these are small digital publications which are not tied down by advertising. Now, why will mainstream media not write? Because you know that they're fully captured by, first I said, states and government, because they are the biggest advertiser. Then the big advertisers are industry associations. The third big advertiser is, of course, industry itself, right? And you know today that a PR agency does a whole deal. So what questions will be asked if you're invited to a panel discussion? Whether your boss gets to write what they call native advertising and paid articles. If you have a budget of 5 crores advertising budget, what is it that you get? So you will get a few quotes, you'll get invited to the panel, you'll get invited to your annual corporate awards. All this is part of a annual package negotiation. including in some publications having a journalist who is supposed to ensure, like a relationship manager, that nothing negative about you ever comes in the paper. This is mainstream media today. It's a fact of life. We know it. We have written about it, right? So if somebody pretends that they don't know, that means they've just not Googled enough, because it's all there in the public domain. The journalism is happening in blog spots, which individuals do at the risk of their life, or smaller digital publications. There are like a dozen of them today.
And yet with Twitter and other forums, Sucheta, everyone has an opinion. So any scam, any controversy does get amplified, Sucheta. In that sense, you have maybe thousands of journalists today.
Absolutely. In fact, I tell people sometimes when people try to hassle me, and every day there is someone or the other wanting me to take up issues, and I keep saying we're a very tiny publication. We can only take up certain number, and I can't take up everything from politics to some jute problem somewhere, someone's housing problem in the south. So, and when they try to say that I have data, I say, what's stopping you? You can create a blog in 2 minutes. That is how the whole ICICI thing came out. It took 2 years, but somebody wrote a blog himself and put it out in the public domain. So why, when people want you to do it on something that you're not convinced, it's a double-edged sword, at least as far as I'm concerned. Because when people ask me whether you'll do a story, I tell them, A, you will give me the documents. If I'm convinced, I'll do it. But the flip side, as you said about this whole social media thing, is that if I feel it's not good enough, or if I feel it's not backed up, and believe me, 9 out of 10 people who want to give you a story, half of it is either their problem with that person or their hysterical sort of notion that there's something big happening which just cannot be proved. The minute you say, I'm sorry, this is not good enough, one can't write it, they'll say, oh, you must have contacted the other side, you must have got paid. That is a double-edged sword that you deal with today, because either way, you're the bad person. So I think I have now started telling people, you write it. You become the journalist. Anybody with a camera and a smartphone and access to the internet is a journalist. Why do you need me to stick my neck out? Because you have something to hide, right?
Sujata, can there be an Indian equivalent of Rajat Gupta, in the sense that, trial, conviction, appeal, nothing happened. He came out, wrote his version in the book Mind Without Fear, which I read with quite a lot of intent and interest. But anything remotely like that you recollect that's happened in India, where many may believe that Rajat Gupta should have got a benefit of doubt, but he did not, and he was convicted, spent time in jail, rigorous imprisonment. Do you think anything remotely that fast-track justice in India, and is that really the problem, Sucheta? Is that really the problem?
Yeah, it ought to be. No? I mean, you look at the only difference between the American system and ours is this failure. Because at the end of the day, when America has, of course, some of the large companies have got away. I'm not saying no. So we used to say, and Citibank also used to do it, that in 92, a lot of key people in Citibank quickly got a golden parachute and moved away. Okay? And all large multinationals and banks have a system of making it an employee fraud. So they will cut off with the employee, they'll blame it on an individual. The company is protected, the whole legal system works at protecting the company, but individuals, if they're responsible, including whether it's Ivan Boski or whatever in America, went to jail. Why just Rajat Gupta? So everybody did jail time. The difference and in India is that we do not want that at all. We do not want a conviction because, like you said, that nothing is ever finally decided, even in the Supreme Court of India. And the minute you drag it 25, 30 years, I mean, I don't know whether you know what is happening to the 92 scam cases when they're finally climbing to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court judges are in no mood to listen. They don't want to hear the arguments. So they have told a lot of people that if you are accepting guilt, we are closing the cases with time served. And all cases are being closed. Okay. They're saying that if you, and I know this because I took up the case of one man called Mr. Baudekar, who was a manager in SBI, who I believe was completely innocent because he was countersigning signatures. He was constantly raising and writing that why are you making me countersign signatures of what is happening in Treasury by Sitaraman when I'm not even in Treasury? How can this be part of my job? The poor man was arrested. He was in jail with Harshad Mehta. He didn't know Harshad Mehta. He, his whole family was destroyed. And when it went finally to the Supreme Court, a top lawyer who you and I know, a senior counsel, agreed to appear free for him. Okay? And he came back and told him that, look, Mr. Baudekar, you have two choices. If you accept guilt and it'll be basis time served and this matter goes away for the rest of your life. And this man was already in his 50s, 25 years later. If you want me to fight it, I will fight it for you. I will do a proper job, but it may go either way because it will all depend on the judge, on his mood, whether he's convinced, what will happen, how the other side argues. And you know, it's not going to get over tonight. It may go on for another 5, 10 years. You never know how long. So you have two choices, you decide. He decided to accept guilt. I mean, is this justice? Is this a legal system? So this is what happens to a poor person or someone without the power, and people with deep pockets. What NSC is doing happens. We will keep appealing. They have the top law firms saying, "Nahi, nahi, sab kuch appeal karo." And we'll find a way to buy time. We'll drag it through SAT, then we'll drag it to the Supreme Court, then, as you said, curative petition, some other petition. We will keep it open forever. You'll never have to pay, but we will keep collecting legal fees. Don't forget that. And those are in crores and crores of rupees.
Yeah. Yeah, I just heard about a lawyer purchasing an apartment for 60-65 crore in the last couple of months. Yeah. I won't reveal the name, of course not. NSC, you mentioned NSC, Sucheta, and as you said, it's a national shame, without doubt. This entire saga about the Himalayan yogi seems to be the biggest joke that anyone can play, on us. Either which way, whether you believe or do not believe, either way, it is a disgrace. Sucheta, CBI has swung into action far too late. Far too late. The only thing that they may be able to do is by issuing the LOCs, the lookout circular. The apparent perpetrators of this scam may not be able to at least fly overseas. Sucheta, are you completely shocked that this escaped the glare of the board, a supposedly independent board? It escaped the glare of the regulators, the finance ministry, the government, just everyone, or do you think it's it is convenient silence for whatever reasons on all sides? Ki ek penalty laga do 1,000 crore ka, matter is over. Let's rest, let it rest there. And then someone in SEBI thought that no, okay, we'll publish this order. But overall, just the fact that when it happened, the fact that everyone was silent about it, and not just the co-location scam, this episode itself, that you have a chief operating officer who's recruited. Where are the entire governance processes? And of course, I want to spend 5 minutes on governance after this. But on NSC itself, Sucheta, co-location scam about which you wrote extensively, and then this complete governance failure is what is my first impression about NSC.
Okay, so I don't want to sound like I'm blowing my own trumpet, but the fact is that all of this is documented in our book Absolute Power, which was released in June. Okay, the appointment of Subbu, the manner in which he was appointed, his appointment letter, which is one line, that is also published in the book. Now, more than that, when you said board, my question is which board? SEBI board, SEBI chairman at that time, the incestuous relationships, new board. So look at SEBI, okay, and this is what SEBI and RBI do. So RBI, as the SFIO had correctly asked RBI, who buried the ILFS saga, why did you not take action when you knew that there were 20 whistleblower letters at least in ILFS? So similarly with SEBI, so co-location scam happened, the defamation case happened, the investigations proved things. So look at the manner of the investigation in the first place. Every investigation, SEBI has in 2013 got the powers of search, seizure, arrest. Today, they have as many powers as CBI, DRI, Enforcement Directorate, SFIO, more powers than SFIO. Okay. On paper, SEBI is the most powerful capital market regulator in the world. The only time they use their power of arrest is when they went and arrested one guy in the pyramid, not Pyramid Saimira, those three companies, Kolar Biotech or whatever. And they did such a shoddy job without giving him enough time that he walked out after filing a case in the Bombay High Court. After that muck on their face, they have never used their power of arrest again. Okay. SEBI under Pradnya Sarvade, who is now additional DG Police, had done the mapping of mobile phone locations in the Pyramid Saimira case to do a fantastic job, right? Which means that SEBI has the internal resources and the ability if they want to use it. Why is it that they have the temerity to issue an order saying that there is some yogi who is writing some emails, and in this day and age, which is 10 years after Pyramid Saimira, we don't know how to find the IP address in the man? And everybody in the, I mean, I'm not joking, but since I knew Ravi and Chitra very well, and Arish Patil, and I was such a big supporter of NSE to start with, I even knew their drivers. Okay. So I bump into the driver after the co-location scam and the legal order. And he comes up to me because I was parking my car in the parking at a mall. And he says, Madam, aapne pehchana nahi mujhe? I said, हाँ, pehchana to, how are you? So he said, Madam, aapne bahut acha kaam kiya about this. I said, wow, even you know all the way. So he says, sabko pata hai. The day you won the order, the atmosphere in NSE was like India had won a cricket match against Pakistan. Okay? And I said, to abhi kya ho raha hai? Wo boyfriend chala gaya? So he started laughing. Everybody in the exchange used to call that man her boyfriend. Are you saying nobody knew? So this is one part which I'm talking about frankly. One of the people who was very illustrious person who was appointed NSE chairman, the day that he was appointed, we were having, Devashish and I were having dinner with him and someone who went on to become the finance secretary. And we said, we believe that you've just accepted NSE chairmanship. And he said, yes. The entire dinner, we told him all the things that were going wrong with the NSE. And I said, please read my articles to celebrate NSE's 5th year. I mean, I was like a fangirl, okay? Because I thought this is the best thing that could happen to India's capital market. We've set up, and we have described that in the book also. They did wonderful, positive stuff. They have transformed the capital market. And I was a huge supporter. I said, look at what is going wrong today, okay? He did nothing. The finance secretary went on to be finance secretary and has now retired. So in this whole period, this man also finished time serving, was done and gone. Nobody wants to act. And it is outrageous, because I don't for a second buy that they didn't know, because people like me are hammering at them saying, please look at it, please read. Today you can WhatsApp articles, sending them the articles saying, read. They don't want to do it. Instead, the other side will come up with some mischief, use some digital agencies, PR agencies, start bad-mouthing you. I mean, why shouldn't these people who sat there earn crores of rupees, whether they are judges or whether they are the most celebrated accountants? You guys look at your profession and tell me who was one of the most celebrated people who was sitting on their board. And today in the new board, you have, and I'm going to name names here because Dharmishta Rawal was a friend of mine. She was ED law in SEBI. She joined SEBI in 92. So she has seen the evolution. She has seen what SEBI was under G.V. Ramakrishna. Today, when I'm reading this 190-page order, if you're arguing that once they resign, it's all over, which means kuch bhi lootmar karo, I have resigned, nobody should ask me questions. And she sat on that board and agreed with this. And suddenly SEBI is waking up. The guy who's written the order, Mr. Barua, has also been there from 91. So he's not one of the people who came in later or who was former bank chairman and didn't understand regulation. Each of these people is responsible for this shoddy job. You think it's by chance? It is deliberate.
Greed has taken over completely, Sucheta, in all these scams. Again, one commonality, greed and power, as I think the book you mentioned, the title, absolute power, being vested in a few individuals.
Absolutely. and these individuals fight to ensure there's no sunlight. So NSC has, I don't know if you read the saga, but I think you also have been interested in right to information. So
Yeah.
they said we are not subject to right to information, even though they are a first line regulator. Okay. So then they lost at the appeal. They went to CIC, they lost over there. They filed a case in the Delhi High Court. They lost over there. It's a fantastic, hard hitting judgment which says that you should be subject to RTI. They've filed a case in the division bench. They've got a senior counsel who's an expert in ensuring Tariq pe Tariq. The case has not come up for the last 15 years. Okay. Now, my point is that why does this need to be fought in court? SEBI regulates NSE, right? It is a regulated entity. Every single appointment over there has to go through fit and proper norms. So you needed Finance Ministry and SEBI to issue a one-line order saying, shut up, withdraw those cases, subject yourself to right to information because you are a regulator. You are a first-line regulator. When SEBI doesn't do it, when the Finance Ministry doesn't do it even today, and they're allowing that case to rot in the division bench of the Delhi High Court, they're not complicit. They're not hand in glove. You see our struggles. In our book, we have documented our struggle to get information. We could get some from Finance Ministry and SEBI by filing RTI saying it is your job to get it from NSE. And we were lucky that we had a former Central Information Commissioner like Sailesh Gandhi willing to file it in order to give it a little clout. But they are all complicit. Why is it that they won't say you're professionally run, you don't want to get listed, you don't want to do quarter on quarter results, you don't want to answer analysts, at least subject yourself to RTI? Why are the exchanges and NSDL not under RTI?
On RTI, I have a question from an audience member who says, can RTI be used as a tool for uncovering what goes on inside the swanky regulatory buildings?
Well, we file a lot of RTI, and exactly like questions in Parliament, there is zero accountability. So they give you rubbishy answers, they reject most of it. All the regulators reject your questions. Okay, we have done seminars on this, we try to find ways around it. People have gone to court, the judges themselves are against RTI. So look at the flip-flop that happens. I mean, look at this thing about bank inspection reports. There is a Supreme Court order which has said that you have to give the inspection reports. They said remove the names, so they redact every first name or corporate name that you have. So actually a weak report comes out. Even that the banks are getting together to go and file a case. As you said, nothing is ever settled in India. Everything can be argued if you have deep pockets.
Yeah, you mentioned banks, Sucheta, so I'll jump onto that bandwagon as well. And finally, I'll come to the accountants. With regard to banks, Sucheta, again, over the last 7-8 years, you look at the scams from the Nirav Modi, now to the people are talking of ABG Shipyard.
Absolutely.
In between the ADAG group, owes around 50,000 crores or to 80,000 crores to creditors. Banks, the interest keeps, the reason why I'm not sure about the amount is the interest keeps accumulating. But let's assume 40,000 crore in at least principal amount. And I recollect one of the Big Four partners, and I was, I met him for lunch, and he said that just dekho ye screen, abhi wo creditors ka sab meeting shuru hoga. So just have a look at how this entire scene unfolds. And this was one of the big groups which was undergoing insolvency maybe 6-8 months back. And when you look at it and when you see how things are happening, I just asked the question, innocent question to the partner: how did you lend? How did the banks lend to your promoter, whom you're now representing? And his answer just struck me, Sucheta, completely stunned me. In fact, he said that when the economy is on a high, when GDP is growing, 7-8%, that there are 3 banks that come to lend you when you need only one. And
Correct.
when things go topsy-turvy, then you have all these people chasing as creditors. And one of the bank CEOs, and this is, a foreign bank CEO, had given a 250 crore loan from his bank to the promoter. And when it went down under, and he was asked, how did you lend? He said, I lent on trust. So, we talk of banks, we talk of processes, and yet when you see at what has happened to that Kocher and a few others, Sucheta, I mean, the banking system and, that houses our savings. Many, millions may come on the road if one of the banks go down under. We need to unmute Sucheta. Can someone unmute Sucheta, please?
Yeah, they've done it.
So Sucheta, on banks, I think this is not just sensitive, but close to all our hearts. खुदा ना खास्ता अगर कोई बैंक कल down under हो गया और उसमें अपना पैसा है, तो many people will be on the road. So banks have been another, area where just nothing seems to work. No amount of governance, nothing seems to ever clean up the governance process at the banks.
So, you look at two things, okay? When you say banks, you really mean public sector banks, okay? Because there is zero accountability. And we, the people of India, have been paying the price.
But private sector, yes, bank. You look at the private sector banks who've lent to so many of these big groups, Sucheta, they can't be completely absolved of what's happened.
No, let me come to it. So let's go step by step. The big elephant in the room is public sector banks, because we, the people of India, are paying the price. Okay, for decades and decades, including the Congress government, or rather they pioneered it, they would quietly give the money from the exchequer to top up these banks, and there was zero accountability. In public, bank chairman used to bleat about saying, oh, if you come after us, we will be too nervous to lend. How come none of them are nervous about lending to crooks? Okay, now let's look at the private banks. The first round of private banks opened up around 92, 93. So you had Times of India and all kinds of people, 20th century, Centurion, Punjab Centurion. So two things happened in privatized banks. First of all, by and large, they can't perform well. They get taken over because there's always someone who's growing. So you have two kinds of banks. 4 or 5 private banks have done well, and they are smart. Okay, so I remember in the 80s, I was once writing about this Murjani, Mike Murjani with those jeans and Gloria Vanderbilt and whatever. And it was an eye-opener for me, because I was a really young journalist, hardly 3-4 years in the profession. And what somebody told me is that, look at the difference, that he owes money to a bunch of banks globally. One of the big lenders to him was Bank of Baroda. He says Bank of Baroda will file urgent processes, go to court, ram falana dimka. Citibank and others will walk into their house, even pick up the most expensive paintings, artifacts, whatever can be sold, and walk out, because they are looking at what they can recover. Okay. The minute a bank CEO's salary, and we're not talking about a Rana Kapoor, it's a little different, is linked to performance, and if it's not entirely fudged, you have some people who are willing to look, you have a little better process. But public sector banks, even today, have been a complete free-for-all. You look at what happened to the bankruptcy process. Okay, many people were expecting change in 2014 because this government talked something and has not delivered. So corruption has not reduced at all. All salaries in government and banks have increased, but corruption is the same as ever, rent seeking, because of this inequality factor. Because how much ever you pay them, it's not enough. Their aspirations now have gone sky high. So where they wanted to plant their children in a good school here, they want an IB school. What used to be good enough, like a cathedral, is not good enough in Bombay. Then you could send your children to the best college here. You'll call up someone to get admission in Xavier's. Now you want them in Wharton, which means you want either money or a scholarship. So the greed level is forever rising. So look at bankruptcy. This government made an example of 4 people. So you had one SR, one Bhushan, and whatever. They said, oh, great success. Look at the corruption in the bankruptcy process. Corruption between resolution officials, between bankers. I know so many people who, believing that this government is serious about bankruptcy, had come in wanting to be resolution professionals. They walked out in 3 years because they said, if we are honest, nobody wants us. The main people who don't want us are the creditors, which is the banks, because they don't want anyone doing an honest job as a resolution professional. So the same corruption is going to destroy this. Your 4 examples are over. So people who are big supporters of the government will say, dekho, 4 is over. What about the rest now? Right?
Sucheta, to supplement here, I've heard horror stories about some of the resolution professionals. Horror stories. lest someone identify one of them and I be slapped with a defamation suit, I will not name them. But I have really heard horror stories about this entire process and how the claims are admitted and so on and so forth.
And how
That's where.
relatives are buying up property at a huge discount. I mean, everybody knows that some of the buyers have no money, or the same banks are finding a way to lend to some relative of the person. I mean, what the hell is going on, you know?
Sure.
Are you saying this government doesn't know? Of course they know, because we are all talking about it.
Yeah. One question from the audience, which I'll take: What are the two to three things that can be done easily done? Nothing in this country can be easily done to restore confidence in India's financial system.
Frankly, if you ask me, I mean, for the last 5 days, I've been so angry about this NSC thing because I feel as an Indian, okay, that we had gone away from this reputation of elephants walking on our street and cows sitting and occupying our roads to an IT tech, superpower. You look at any serial around the world, the minute they want to show someone who's good in tech, it's an Indian, right? I mean, sometimes it's over dramatized as though we Indians are born with some tech genius. Now, the largest exchange in the country, nobody understood the co-location scam because it was all about high technology. In fact, the day we went to court, we didn't even expect the judge to know. So we were like.
You can hear me?
Yeah, Arun, I can hear you.
I think Sucheta's screen has frozen, but we'll try to get her back.
Yeah, sure.
Internet may have gone off.
Possible, yeah.
You all can type in your questions to Amay as well. Amay is doing a wonderful job relaying it to me. Should I message Sucheta?
Yeah, if you could. And Chirag, just keep a watch on in case she's joining back again.
Yeah.
Arun, could you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we'll get her to rejoin.
Yeah. I think she's back, Arun.
Yeah, wonderful. Could we just get
I can see her in the, she's logged in, but can't see the video yet. So.
Yeah, could you just maybe get her to unmute? I think we need to get her to unmute. So.
Sure. Doing that.
No, she is not yet connected to audio.
Okay. I think maybe the internet problem.
Yeah. I'm sure many of you are.
It's some interesting questions flowing in, Arun.
Yeah, I'm answering directly also.
Yes.
We'll take them up.
Yes.
Yeah, Sucheta is back now. Yeah.
Chirag, if you could unmute her, please. Yeah, madam, we are doing that. Sorry for the.
I'm so sorry. I think it happened at
Not
my
Not at all. So, no one has left the chat. People are, I think it's a riveting conversation for me. And we have quite a few more questions. You were talking about technology, someone is saying, and it froze. We're talking of technology, Sucheta, elephants on the road is what you were talking about.
So I'm saying that, that I can understand that people did not understand co-location, how complex it was, and derivatives trading. But now to have all that, the fact, I keep telling people that if you the media talk, it's about NSC being the biggest exchange in the country. It's not. It's a virtual monopoly in the country. It is the biggest derivatives exchange in the world. It is something that should have been a matter of such pride. you have, by the complicity and silence of regulators, the board, the finance ministry, going back over a 10-year period to 12-year period, you have made us a global embarrassment. I mean, people are laughing at us, talking about this. How dare, what have we done that we deserve to be laughed at? And I mean, we're all joking today, at least among ourselves, about which guru is directing which action. This is what you want about what should have been a matter of national pride, and this has been the excuse for not taking action. So, for the last 12 years, every time they needed to act against NSE, oh, we don't want to destabilize it because it is so big, it's so wonderful, it's done such a great job. I mean, if you don't do the right thing, this is how you get cow dung on your face.
Just a couple of questions. There are questions flowing in. I'll shoot them one by one.
Sure.
We'll try to take as many as possible. First one from a good friend of mine. What next on NSE? Should we wait for CBI to wake up? B, will they ever get approval for an IPO with this overhang?
So two things. One is CBI has woken up, and as usual, it's going berserk. So it has issued lookout notices, and it is, now trying to find some way to create the photo opportunity. Don't be surprised if you have the usual arrest saga with, a lot of drama to say we're doing something. It is too little, too late. Okay. What was the second one?
IPO.
IPO. I think it's going to be very difficult just now. I feel that whoever, and if the law firms are responsible, I'm saying this openly, they gave bad advice. If Vikram Limay had been sensible, he would have paid that money and he would have done the IPO. And I even question the foreign institutional investors who are keeping quiet. I mean, look at some of the stuff that's coming out. Goldman Sachs, they're very happy with. Abhay Avaldar, who's been around, they're happy with. What is going on? Will someone investigate all this or not? Why is it that the FIIs who are talking so much are suddenly quiet in the last 5 years? What is this mischief going on, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the
I'm
next,
asking fast, okay? So keep your
yeah, we'll take a few more. Another from I think everyone here is a friend, but he's also an investment advisor. He's asking, are nationalized banks a den of corruption?
I think that all of us know. Let's not talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm only going to say yes to what you're thinking.
Yeah. Next one is any view on Bitcoin or crypto, Sucheta? They're asking. You want to take that or no?
Yeah. I mean, I've written about it and I have very strong views that this is nothing but a Ponzi which is luring people. And I think, without any basis in fiat currency, I don't think it works. That's my view. I'm sure there are a lot of people who will argue otherwise, but I'm entitled to my views.
Sure. Next one is very interesting. What motivates you to keep going in spite of all the, in spite of the hard work involved, in spite of at times disappointments that could come your way, in terms of the results not being commensurate to your hard work?
Okay, this is the most difficult question and one which I think about all the time, because whatever answer I give, there'll be half the audience which will say, I don't believe it. Everybody has a reason and a motive. So, in fact, I was discussing with Devashish just 2-3 days ago. And I keep saying the parallel is very simple. I don't know whether you saw that during, this whole pandemic when there was a shutdown, one Sardarji on a cycle used to cook langar at home alone and go and distribute it to people who didn't have. So I think it's your personality, what you do. I don't think it is about rewards and punishments or whatever. Yes, sometimes it's irritating. There's a lot of things that happen because of national interest. I feel very, very strongly about that, even though others very jingoistically talk about their being nationalists and patriots. I think if you're a nationalist, you have to do something which sometimes, you have to pay a price for. I don't know what it is, but I feel like doing this and I enjoy it.
Yeah, this one is a bit controversial, but let me take it. Sharp rise in market cap of a particular group, which is believed to be close to the power corridors.
Okay. So, in my view, that group is very, very openly manipulated by one, and I tweeted about this without naming names. Obviously, I'm not going to name names because I'm not interested in another defamation case. It's too boring. But this guy is sitting in London and manipulating things here through the FII route. Again, I do not believe that the regulators cannot check this or don't know it. Nobody wants to do anything.
Suchita, from me, governance in terms of the disclosures. The other day, I was looking at the BSc website and I was waiting for a particular disclosure, and I saw that 2,500 disclosures had come in one day. It was a results day, Jan and Feb first week was a results day. 2,500 disclosure on one day across companies on the BSc. Of course, some companies may have had multiple disclosures. How does an investor keep abreast and so on and so forth? But the main question is, do you think that's one area where we've come a long way, that the companies have no option but to disclose?
So, two things, okay? I think some of the disclosures that companies are making is a very good thing, okay? So, whatever is likely to be price sensitive, it is their duty and obligation to report in on paper is a good thing. Let me tell you, there are more than 6,000 companies listed. Not everyone is doing it. Not everyone has the energy to follow up. But all the big companies have to follow these rules. And to that extent, this rules about governance is good. If you ask me, both whether it is alerts to investors and what companies have to do have gone to ridiculous levels about the checkbox thing. And this is only because SEBI has sat around having committee after committee, which comes, even I was on one of them, the Narayan Murthy committee. But we have come to ridiculous things. Like, I'll tell you, I was on the board of a company for a short while. On day one of the things that I had to do is fill up a piece of paper to rate the other members on the board. I'm meeting them for the first time. I know nothing about them. And based on that little introductory interaction, you are asking me to checkbox and rate them on some scale. What kind of nonsense is this, right? So on day one, you are making me either guess or lie, whichever way you want to look at it. And to think that people in SEBI, people in industry, people in government, including your representatives as accountants and company secretaries, sat on that committee and said, yes, this checkbox is fine. I mean, didn't we do it to ourselves? This kind of ridiculous nonsense that is going on, I think, has to stop. You need to cut it down. Governance is not about red tape. What is important has to be disclosed. And when it comes to the crunch, if it is a big company, how much of information? I mean, look at what happened with the Tatas, okay? Holy cows, nobody wants to talk about them. But when the independent director, Nasli Wadia, went to SEBI and said, I took an independent decision as an independent director. Are you standing by me? Did the regulator stand by him? And every independent director who voted against what the Tata said is out. They're no longer on the Tata board. The Infosys report, has anyone seen it finally? We don't, right? I mean, that report, which was the big crux of controversy, is still not in the public domain. So I feel that, again, it's a halfway house. Yes, it is a huge improvement, no doubt about it. It has also gone to ludicrous levels at one end in terms of this checkbox nonsense, which ought to be cut. And then when the really powerful people do something wrong, because the regulator won't act, nothing matters. It doesn't come out. There is no action.
This is to do with the auditing profession. It comes from an internal auditor, I presume. At an individual level, as an internal auditor, what steps should we take while reviewing the operations of banks, NBFCs, and stockbroking firms? If you want to take that.
I haven't quite understood the question, because if as an internal
So
auditor,
if you are an internal auditor,
I'm saying as an internal auditor, you see something wrong, you have to report it. I mean, I don't understand what steps, because your duty is
any particular areas you think they should pay more attention to within a bank? Any areas where there are more scams where they should something. I'm trying to understand the question myself. Yeah.
So I think in banks also, when reckless lending is happening to a group, it comes out. It's there. If you look at audit reports, or if you look at what happened with PwC and Reliance Home, just for an example, that they complained to the regulator more than 6 years ago, right? They were threatened. I got calls from someone in Singapore saying that they don't know what to do because this man is very powerful. It's taken 6 years for SEBI to issue an interim order. So I mean, I don't know that there is any general principles that I can say, look at this area and look at that area. What happens, I think, is very clear. So let me give you an example which we're writing about. If it's a stockbroking firm, whether it is all the ones which have failed, Modex, BMA Wealth, Anugrah, the fact that money was coming in and he had promised an assured return would be very clear to any internal auditor, right? And that is not the job of a broker. By very definition has to put through transactions. He's not a portfolio manager. So it doesn't require genius for an auditor to know that ye sab galat ho raha hai. You've not gone and taken SEBI's permission to be either an advisor or a portfolio manager. You are a broker. So how is it that you're promising an assured return? What is it that you're putting out? So I think, I don't think there are any broad principles, but when wrongdoing comes in front of you, it'll be very evident to you.
Yeah, I think we'll wind up in 5 minutes, but one area I've left uncovered, it's also come from audience member, ICAI, NFRA. Very clearly, there was an inadequacy felt in terms of, the regulation of the institute over the profession, over the auditors. And especially after Satyam, there were never two doubts that an independent regulator would happen, despite all the efforts that the institute made, to see to it that it did not. But it did happen, the NFRA. And now you have a turf war between the ICI and the NFRA, where the ICI, is constantly writing to the MCA. The NFRA, it believes, is impinging on its turf. But would you give some credit, Sucheta, to NFRA that over the last 4-5 years, quick action, big scams, we are out with our 300-page report. Then let people do what they want. But we are out with our report. We are banning people. Even last week, I don't know how many of you all have read an NFRA 58-page report asking a public company to restate its financial statements. And of course, I had never heard about the auditor before. But a 58-page report saying these are the 20 reasons why you need to restate the financial statements. But again, you have a turf war between the ICA and NFRA. You're back to the old days where you always have turf war between regulators.
So, the NFRA reminds me identical of what happened in SEBI, okay? NFRA was lucky to have a really tough chairman who did a good job with a small team. And as I've said, that NFRA got a start like G.V. Ramakrishna gave to SEBI. If you remember, if any of you remember 92, the brokers and others didn't even understand what is the meaning of regulation and that they cannot keep opposing SEBI beyond a point. They all had access to the finance ministry. So today they're not powerful, they're not on boards, they can't do it. I'm seeing accountants doing exactly this to NFRA. What I find pathetic, even this demand that they will sit on NFRA's board, that they should have representation. And I think the former chairman is on record giving an interview to Sundaresha Subramaniam in ET that, how can a regulated entity be sitting on a regulator's board? It makes no sense. There is no provision in an independent regulator to say a regulated entity. You can be on committees, you can be on advisory committees, but you cannot sit on the main board at all. But to make this demand, then to have a powerful, we all know who is the powerful president and why he is there, because of the big corporate clout that he brings in. I think it's nonsense, and I think right-thinking auditors need to back NFRA. It will be in the interest of all of you as accountants, because you need a strong regulator. And for heaven's sake, don't allow it to go the way SEBI did, because SEBI was quickly taken over by the finance ministry, and one after the other, every IAS officer has looked at it as a post-retirement sinecure. They have good allowances, they have lots of foreign trips. So it's like taken for granted. I retire as finance secretary, my next job is as SEBI chairman, so that I extend my tenure another 3 years minimum, but 5 years if I can lobby the finance ministry. Please, for heaven's sake, don't allow it to go in that direction, and realize that it is in your best interest to have a strong NFRA.
I am fully with you on the, completely with you. Just one point, you mentioned a corporate president, not because he happens to be a good friend of mine, but he was absolutely not connected to that corporate in the last 3 years whatsoever. But otherwise, as far as the NFRA and the institute is concerned, completely with you. Even as an elected member of the institute today, I can tell you that that the views of the definitely my personal views are not allowing. NFRA is a regulator which is acting and acting tough. And I think for a change, a lot of people thought that the heavy acts of the institute is only falling on the small firms, only on the small firms. Here, the NFRA has come out with several hundred pages report with a bare bones of a team, barely 10 people, 12 people. Even I read the interviews that I mentioned about, and then to come up with these voluminous reports. And last week they've asked for restatement again of a firm, public company. At least someone is acting, and someone is acting quick. And you may have an opinion. You may feel that the NFRA is going overboard. You may feel that they are being too tough. But at least someone is acting. And I think that pressure, because the NFRA is there, I think now the pressure is on the institute as well, that they can't be seen as a lax regulator any longer, because perceptions matter, right? Perceptions matter. And I think the NFRA, a lot of us would argue, if you're unbiased and if you want to be fair, I think the NFRA over the last 4-5 years has done a terrific job, what the institute honestly could not in the last 3 decades.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other question that we have? AGMs. Okay. Sucheta, someone is asking your opinion on the so-called AGMs and the voting, since most retail investors don't participate. But I'll add a caveat here that the institutional investors suddenly, have been up in arms on many resolutions in several companies, which again wasn't the case at least a decade ago. Suddenly, over the last couple of years, last 18 months, institutional investors are making a big noise. Sucheta?
Absolutely. And it's all being done because it's mandatory, right? So SEBI has said that institutions cannot keep quiet on resolutions. They have to take a stand. And if they are supporting a resolution also, they have to explain why, and if they're rejecting it. So the minute it became mandatory, and one of my earliest jobs as a business journalist was being sent out every afternoon to cover AGMs, and it was such a farce. They used to organize who speaks. So we've come a long way, and the biggest shareholders at that time used to be the 4 or 5 institutions, LIC, UTI, and whatever, and every company knew how to manage them and used to push things through. Today you have the institutional space is diversified. They have fiduciary responsibility, say as mutual funds, or even FIIs maybe sometimes are going to be asked questions by their constituents. So with this whole thing about proxy advisors doing a study, and if nothing else to earn their keep, they have to take a stand and tell you why you should vote or shouldn't vote against a resolution. Questions are being asked, and I think it's a healthy thing. It's a pity that retail investors are not taking more interest, but I think this is how it is all over the world.
Quoting, my final question from Sucheta's book, The Absolute Power. This is about insider trading. Many family managed companies, and this is 3 decades ago, many family managed companies happily participated in manipulating their share prices since there was no law against insider trading those days. At the first ever international conference on capital markets organized by SEBI in the early 90s, Hemendra Kothari, the then BSE president, I think he was with DSP Maryland, began his speech by saying that the only kind of trading that happens on Indian bourses is insider trading. Sucheta, we've come a long way from that as well. But is that scourge of insider trading? You look at the SEBI orders and you feel, oh, how come senior employees of big companies can do this? Sucheta, do people do it innocently? Do they not realize what's going on? Or do you think that, there is too much of greed in making a fast buck?
I think it's both greed and stupidity, okay? I mean, a lot of times, for instance, when I'm on social media, I look at some comments and sometimes they're so hilarious that I actually go and see the Twitter bio to understand whether this man is literate or not. And I will see that he's either an IITian or some tech expert, and they will not use Google, okay? So similarly, when somebody says that you held shares and during the cool period you bought or sold them, or your accountant did it, it's a load of rubbish. It's hogwash, okay? And they are just so silly and arrogant. I mean, you get your family to buy. Journalists have done it. The 2-3 celebrated cases where journalists were caught on insider trading, when you look at what SEBI found, you don't know whether to laugh or to cry. my point is, as journalists, we are reporting on so many cases. I feel thoda akkal to dikhao, right? So you are stupid enough to do insider trading, and then you're stupid enough to do it so crudely. As a journalist, you should at least know it's not possible. And I'm telling you, whether it is about this large corporate group which is traded or about NSE, I find on social media completely pathetic comments like, you must have short sold. I mean, I say NSC is not even listed, for God's sake. Okay, so you can't short sell it. There are no options and puts also available. The second thing people don't understand is that if you are in a certain job, everything, SEBI has spent 20 crores twice over on software that puts out red flags, which makes connections. Now, if half the insider trading orders that I read, they don't even bother to escape that. That means there's not even a thought process to avoid. Which you saw one recent order where after the guy is caught, he's Googling and they find it on his record, his Google history, that he's Googling what the consequences of insider trading are. I mean, senior people in companies, what will you say?
Sucheta, it's been just wonderful chatting with you after a long time, and what a conversation. This is probably one of the highest retention rates for a Zoom interview after 90 minutes. So that's all due to your outspoken views, your firebrand journalism, which quite honestly has served the society at large. And it's been a pleasure chatting with you about scams, regulatory failure, governance, and so many learnings for all of us. Sucheta,
Thank
a
you.
delight and a pleasure. Am I?
Saying that an interview is only as good as the moderator. So thanks for the right questions, because even if I'm outspoken, I can't say anything unless you ask me the right question. Okay.
My pleasure,
So it
Sucheta.
was great fun. I enjoyed being here. Thanks, Amaya. And, hopefully one or two people are inspired to speak out and blow the whistle.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Arun and Sucheta, for this interesting session. Very briefly, I request Nikhil to propose a formal vote of thanks. Nikhil, over to you.
Thanks, Avia and Arun. Thanks, Sucheta, for your very well-studied perspectives which were shared with our professional, both the chartered accountants and the internal auditors. What we noted is I was going through your bio, and you have done your qualification in the Bachelor in Statistics, and you are a lawyer. So hardly I get to see such a good blend that which is put to the right purpose. And you did mention about asking right question and doing right things. I think those things are equally applicable to all the auditors and the professionals in our profession. And good to know new terminology called vulture journalism. So I'll keep that in mind. Thanks to you and thanks to all participants for making this on Friday weekend. The participation was always beyond 150 plus. So thanks to everybody and have a nice weekend.
Thank you, madam, and thank you, Arun.
Please don't thank me. I'm a part of y'all. Lest you forget it.
Excellent.
I'm a founder member of the study circle.
The video recording will be put up on YouTube, shortly, so that we can share the link with everyone. And everyone who's attending this session, do look at Money Life and all their efforts. And I think as Arun mentioned at the beginning, the cause that they're driving. Yeah, and of course the book. Both the books are available.
Scam and the Absolute.
Yes. Great. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone. Thanks Sripa. Thanks Amay. Thanks Nikhil. Bye.
Bye.